Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Speaking Of. Today, we're going to speak of privacy and the deletion of business data and records. And I'm thrilled to death to have with us Bill Tolson of Tolson Communications. He's a longtime information executive and a privacy guru. And beyond that, I'll say, welcome, Bill. Why don't you tell the good folks a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Dave. Great to be on the podcast today. I've been in the information management, records management, information governance kind of industry decades. Also, as part of that, have also been in discovery space at various companies. As you said, Steve, I've last many years focusing on data privacy regulations as well, how it ties to data.
Well, I'm really thrilled that you took the time, especially just a little inside baseball here. I had a little trouble getting the setup to work today. I don't know why, but Bill was a really good sport about it. He's a good guy, besides knowing absolutely everything there is to know that's important about this stuff. So thank you. So, since we're talking about privacy and deletion, and you and I had chatted a little bit prior to coming on today, you made a couple of really interesting points when it comes to even starting with, well, what is deletion? I mean, what does that really mean? It's more than just pushing the button that says DEL on it, isn't it?
Well, it can be. I think most, obviously IT people know this, but most people, in various industries don't really understand what happens when you delete something via your computer, a pull down or hitting the delete key or so forth. And I won't get too deep into it, but basically you're not really deleting anything. You're basically making it a little bit harder to find. So until that data that you just supposedly deleted is overwritten by new data, it's easily recoverable. And what I referred back to back in my early days, and I'm sure you remember this too. You go out and buy a Norton Rescue Disk and
yes,
you can cover anything you want. Why is that important? Well, we're going to get into this idea of data privacy, the new data privacy regulations, what the expectations are around data deletion.
Yeah, no, I remember those days too well. And in fact, that's where I learned about it, that it really just deletes the pointer to the file, but the file is actually still there. And as you're saying, until you overwrite it, well, I won't count how many years later, but that's still essentially how it all works. So the key phrase that you mentioned, of course, is it's still recoverable. So can you talk a little bit to what the new thinking is and the new regulations that are coming out? Are they getting into enough of the weeds to have made that distinction? Because when you may delete private information, but maybe it's not really deleted, which means you could be in violation of that kind of a law if the law is sophisticated enough to say so. Are they?
Yeah. The short answer is no. And what he's referring to is, since the GDPR in the EU back in 2018, it produced a list of data subject or intent rights. The right to query what kind of PII a company has on you, what they're doing with it, have they sold it, those kinds of things. But one of the more important rights in all of the data privacy laws, both in Europe, in Canada, there's a bill in Parliament called 7, also in the federal government and in states, but also state laws, really comes down to the right to erasure or the right to delete. So one of my rights as a individual citizen in Colorado, for example, is that I can query any company around the world, and you can query them on what they have. And then one of your rights is, if there's no law saying that your PII needs to be kept, they must delete it. So if I send a request into IBM and say, what data you have on me, and they come back to me with a report, I'll say, okay, I want you to delete that data, and there's no legal reason not to, then they must delete all of your PII, not just the stuff that's easily found or the stuff that's on their file server, something like that, but any of your PII resident in that company must be deleted. And if you do not find all of it, and later, my PII was found on some sales guy's laptop somewhere, then you're in violation. A lot of these laws have massive fines for these kinds of things. So this is where it gets very important around deletion. As a company owner, as a CIO or CEO or whatever, I'm going to have to respond to these requests, and I'm going to have to be assured that that data is gone. And part of that assumption, I've talked to lawyers in the EU and the United States, and many of the bill authors, various government agencies, or various legislatures, and the assumption is it's an unrecoverable deletion. You being able to say delete my data, and then they delete it 5 minutes later, they can recover it and start using it, and it's not the meaning of the data privacy laws.
Well, of course,
where we get into this idea of
no, it's very, very important. And again, like you said, I don't have to tell you this, but I do find that there is one very large overlooked hole in a lot of strategies at a lot of client organizations that I work with, and that's the backups. Because if you're backing stuff up now that has PIA on it, you delete it, but you don't delete it off the backups. Even if you deleted it off the server correctly, quote unquote, it's still there. Which means if you have a problem and you have to restore the data, at least until however long you keep those backups work their way out of the system, it's still there and it's still perhaps a liability.
That's an ongoing legal question that originally arose with GDPR, but also now is part of all various countries and various states' data privacy laws. Is the comments in the law basically say you must delete the information. Well, I have it sitting on backups. I have it sitting on backup tapes somewhere, and is the expectation that I'm going to store the backup tapes? Find my specific PII, delete it, and then do backup again. As only most people know who are listening to the broadcast, that's very expensive.
Yep.
If you're doing that individual by individual. So the question is, are you in non-compliance because you're not cleaning backup tapes? And I've talked to law firms in and in Canada, the United States, all kinds of other places, and no one knows. There has not been a EU agency decision on this. There has been nothing in the United States as well. So everybody's kind of walking on pins and needles saying, I got a deletion request, but I can't do backup. So they've come up with various potential stopgap measures that we can talk about, but backup tapes around right to delete is a very big sticking point.
So that's really interesting. It suggests that when you do a backup, you don't back up the PII.
That obviously you know this. That would be complex because PII is spread across all kinds of different documents, formats.
Yeah.
It could be up in the cloud, could be on the file server, it could be in your HR system, it could be on individual employees' laptops. And if any of those, all of those, some of them backed up, have copies upon copies upon copies of backups and things like that. So this really needs to be decided as to what this means. How do I respond to a request and meet the intent of the law, but not really? I'm not doing the back. No, I don't know of any company I've run across that is actually restoring backup tapes, delete PII for a particular data subject.
No, nor do I. In fact, as I alluded to, there are times where they don't even think of the backups at all.
Yeah.
which is kind of frightening in a certain way. But it is really fascinating. Yeah.
And you mentioned the fines. I mean, the fines are all over the place, and the fines tend to be scary when you're talking about large data breach or something like that. But for example, in California, a non-compliance event for a single data subject could be in the $2,500 range, something like that. In Colorado, by the way, where I'm based, Colorado Data Privacy Act, a single event fine is $20,000. And then you get into the question of, okay, so I have backups spread around. Is that 3 events?
Right.
I'm sure attorneys will love to argue, but you then start looking at massive potential liabilities. And then in some states, well, in one state, California, and now in the Canadian Privacy Bill, and in the U.S. federal ADPPA, which has not passed yet, they include the private right of action. Instead of waiting for your state attorney general to sue the company and then collect whatever the money they want to keep it, private right of action means you as an individual can sue that company for violation and then start getting these very big fines.
Wow. Promises to get really ugly, doesn't it? Potentially.
Yeah.
But I also hear you say, my words, not yours. But basically, we don't know. We're going to have to wait for a test case or several. So do you have any words of wisdom in the meantime?
Well, yeah, there are some. Actually, years ago, I think at the Nashville ARMA Info, right? I think it was the year or two before COVID. I gave a presentation on a particular subject, and one way that some companies are trying to protect themselves from, if they get sued for non-deletion on backup tapes, they have some form of defense. One potential process is to say, okay, we got a deletion request from Bill Tolson, found everything in the enterprise, we deleted it all, but we can't do the backup tapes because it's just too costly. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep a master log of every deletion request that we get, and it could be 10 per month, it could be 150,000. You just don't know. But we're going to keep a master log. And anytime a backup is accessed for whatever disaster recovery, part of that process is we bring that tape back. We're actually go look for Bill's PII, delete it, and then do a backup again. So they're not. The idea is not to run out and do it every single time somebody like me says delete it, but keep a log and say the next time we access a given tape, we're going to look for PII from these individuals and get rid of it. But we're not going to do that until we have reason to access that tape.
So,
and keep a log, keep documentation, like
right.
Lawyers always tell you that document everything, otherwise it never happens.
Well, but that's interesting and very useful. It's not dissimilar to a go-forward strategy on document deletion, records deletion, or implementing a new way of handling a particular document or migration. Don't lift and shift, but every time you got to go retrieve something, put it in the new place or what have you. So that's actually a somewhat comforting thought, because it's a mindset that's not completely foreign to those of us in the information trades.
Yeah. One way to do an unrecoverable deletion, no matter where, is to always encrypt a given individual's PII with a encryption key. And if you get a deletion request, delete the encryption key. In the eyes of the law, it's gone.
Right.
Because it cannot be recovered. Same with the backup tape. If you got rid of those encryption keys for Bill Tolson, then even if you do use that backup tape again, the data is unrecoverable, and electronically speaking, it has been deleted.
A minute ago, you alluded to essentially the volume of these kinds of requests, and I just wanted to point out, like many of the organizations I work with, when I first started hearing about this sort of stuff, thought, well, how big a deal is this? I mean, how many requests could there be? Now, I know the law says whether it's 1 or 1,000,001, you still have to. But then I got to work with one of the world's most major oil companies. And they've got a whole office set up that they do nothing but this, because they're talking about requests from people around the world. It can be quite voluminous. Yeah. So it is something worth thinking about before you have to do something. So if and when that time comes, you're not starting cold.
You have to prepare way ahead of time. I mean, what you're talking about, and it's called various things, but a data subject access request, or a DSAR.
DSAR, right.
And years ago, I know one of the big market research firms estimated that average company in the EU, because of the GDPR, was receiving 147 DSAR requests per month, and at an average cost of $100 per request. So 147 times 1,400, you get right around $200,000 a year. What if those DSAR requests, which they will, especially with the U.S. coming in and Canada and all this other kind of stuff, what if you're looking at 1,000 requests per month, 10,000 requests per month? Mm-hmm. You're looking at a major cost to the company that nobody is planning on.
It's like the old line, right? $1 million here and $1 million there, and soon you're talking about real money. Okay.
My allowance.
Well, Bill, thank you again so much for spending this wonderful, amazing quality time with us all. There is so much to talk about with all of this. Can we tap you again to come back and continue the conversation?
Yeah, no, this was very enjoyable. I really enjoyed. I enjoy going back and forth. So anytime you wanna do the next topic or get further into stuff, more than happy to jump.
Well, thank you for that. Remembering that no good deed goes unpunished. I'm Steve Weissman, the InfoGov guy. Bill Tolson, thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you all next time.